Hey, we're back with a new series, Story Time. This will be stories from the trenches of my 20 years as a wedding videographer. Just fun, sometimes crazy stories. People are always asking, like, hey, what's the craziest thing you've ever heard? Or the craziest thing that's happened or whatever. So we're just going to start sharing some fun stories, things that I've experienced in my time as a wedding videographer. On today's episode of Story Time, we'll answer the question, have you ever thrown up at a wedding? Yes, it's true. I threw up at a wedding ceremony, but it was fine. So it wasn't really fine. No, it wasn't really fine, but we're just going to say that it was. And in all of our stories, the names of those involved in these cases will be withheld for
mature audiences only.
This is not for mature audiences only. Stop it, Carson. If in every one of these videos I go, when I was at the wedding of name and name, and you do a little black mark over my mouth and blank out the audio as if like I'm not telling you who this was. Up in the mountains of everyone's like, where was that? I don't want to do that because I don't want to create people being like, tell me where, tell me who.
I'll tell you if you give me $100 on Venmo.
I know, then Carson's gonna know. Everyone's like, Carson, who was it? And he's like got a side business going. So I had a wedding out of town up in the mountains, and I'm driving up the windy roads, and I'm starting to feel a little queasy, and I'm thinking, it's the windy roads. Like, I don't normally get queasy on windy roads. Like, I have no problem with this. So I was kind of like, oh, that's odd. Then I'm feeling a little queasy. But I get up there. In this particular wedding, the schedule was like, hey, we have an hour for preps, and then we go straight to ceremony. So there wasn't a lot of time before the ceremony. But I'm up there, and I'm filming. We're filming, the guys, the girls, all the stuff, and setting up for the ceremony. As I'm filming, I'm just like, man, I definitely feel a little off. I'm like, it's all right. It's all right. I've filmed, feeling off. Like this will be fine. Ceremony starts. I'm setting up, and as I'm, kind of running back and forth, taking gear from here to there, I'm just like, man, I'm feeling worse and worse. And it's a longer ceremony. It's like 30-40 minute range ceremony, and everything's in place, everything's good to go, and the ceremony starts, and you get caught up in the moment filming a ceremony. You're like, oh man, look at the emotions, here's a shot of grandma crying, whatever. You get caught up in the stuff, and the ceremony's going, and we're about halfway through the ceremony, and it dawns on me, I'm like, I really don't feel good. And as I'm filming the ceremony, I'm just like, this is not good. And I'm starting to kind of look around and think like, okay, what can I do? How can I handle this? Because I realize I've got, 2 cameras on tripods filming the ceremony, and then I'm holding my monopod, which is just one stick. It doesn't stand up by itself. It's not a tripod. And I've got my camera. I'm the main camera. So I'm on my monopod. I'm filming, and I'm just like, okay, I'm really not feeling good, and it's, I don't want to be gross, but when it's time to throw up, and you start to feel that like in your stomach, and you're like, oh no, and so the vows are happening, and I start feeling it. I'm like, oh man, this like it's coming, and I'm like fighting it. I'm like, no, and then I just realize
it was at this moment that he knew
I'm not going to be able to fight this. Like, it's coming, and and they're saying the vows. This is an outdoor ceremony, and so I start looking around like, okay, what can I do? And by the time that this has happened, I've progressively gone from standing to sitting to crouching, and I'm like sitting on a chair, like huddled over, trying to like hold it together with my monopod, like right next to grandma, in the front row. I'm just like, oh, and I'm like, I hope nobody can see me over here, like groaning in pain, like trying to hold this back. And I finally am just like, okay, I've got 10 seconds and the top is going to blow. And so I'm looking around like, what can I do? And over to the side of the ceremony. Shut up, Carson. You can leave now. And so I'm holding on, and I know I've got 10 seconds. The top's going to blow on this thing. And so I'm looking around, like grandma's right next to me. Bruh. And I look over, and there's a bush. There's a bush right here. And I'm like, this bush is maybe 10 feet away. It's right next to the chairs, right next to guests, right next to everybody. But you know how like time stops and you have these like bam, 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 bam thoughts flying through your head. It's one of these time stops and I'm like, okay, this is the situation. Time is frozen. This is going on. They're in the middle of the vows and, you know, and there's this bush over here. There's people right there. There's no way that no one's going to know what's happening. Like everyone's just going to know. But I've got no choice. Like I can either stand here and throw up or I can run to the side. And so I take my monopod, which does not stand by itself, and I just, like, please, God, don't let this fall. And leave it rolling and run. And run back. And the camera hasn't fallen. And I'm able to finish the ceremony. Now, not again to be gross, but obviously when that happens, you've got to clean up. and I've got no rags, I've got no nothing. And so my hands are dirty.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
And all I can do is just wipe and fling. And so that's the best that could happen in this scenario. I'm like, good thing we're outside. I hope no one smells this. And I'm just trying to do my best to hold it together, dripping on my hands, on my tripod, as we finish this ceremony. And, you know, it all happens. I clearly feel better now that this is over. So I'm like, great, I can make it through the rest of the ceremony. And then I can find a bathroom and clean up.
3 hours later.
And so, you know, we finish the ceremony, you know, they kiss and all this stuff. And you know, I do my typical run to the back, grab the shot of them coming out, you know, still feeling a little queasy, but much better. And so we make it to the back and all that's good. And I go and you know, the ceremony finishes. It's all good. I cut the cameras, you know, and I'm just still flinging because I'm not going to wipe it on my pants. You don't want to smell like that all day. So anyways, I make it to the bathroom, get it all wiped off and cleaned up, and come back. And now that it's all over with and the, you know, photographers starting to take pictures and stuff, you know, and I'm like, okay, we got it all back together. Everything's good. We're filming everything. And I finally, you know, have the courage to like lean over to the photographer and be like, did you see me throw up in the ceremony?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
And they're like, what? No, I had no idea. And I'm like, really? And I kind of like, I figured out nobody knew. I'm like, surely the bride and groom saw it. Like every, nobody said anything. And so I was able to finish out the day. And the thing is, I still felt bad. I felt bad for the entire day, the entire wedding. And I still had that just that knot in your stomach, and you just like, you're not at 100%, you're at 80%, and you're just like, oh man, I hope I can do this. And you put forth 150%, knocked the wedding out of the park. The couple loved their film. Nobody had any idea. You know, I was so worried. You know, I get back, you know, to the edit, and we're like, let's put this thing together. Let's hope I got enough footage. Let's hope it turns out. Of course, the film turned out great, and a couple loved it. And so I was, you know, I learned that, hey, I can shoot a wedding even when I'm feeling terrible, at levels which I've never experienced before. You know, like I've felt, you know, bad. At a wedding, you know, sometimes, you know, you have like a cold or something and you don't feel great, but it's not like you're really that bad. So the kicker to the whole thing is I get home, you know, the next day. I'm like, hey, you know, make some lunch, and I pull out the the lunch meat to make myself a sandwich, and there's mold all over the meat. And I realized the reason I was sick was because I gave myself food poisoning, because right before I left for the wedding, I made myself a really fast sandwich, and I was in a hurry. I was like, I've got to get this, you know, hour and a half drive up a mountain, so I don't want to be late. So I slapped a sandwich together really fast. I probably didn't even turn the lights in the kitchen on. I was just like going fast, boom, and I jammed out. And I can remember, it dawned on me, as I was driving up the mountain eating this sandwich, I remember going, that tastes kind of musty. Whatever. But it almost tastes like mold. Anyways, I'm just driving. I'm booking it. And just remember eating the sandwich going, this is kind of gross. But not realizing that I was eating mold and I gave myself food poisoning by the sandwich that I made for myself. So completely my fault there. But that was the kicker to the entire thing. Is I got home and realized the reason I was sick was not because I was sick, but because I gave myself food poisoning. So, if you ever give yourself food poisoning at a wedding, then I'm sorry. It sucks. But anyways, so what I learned from this was a couple things. I learned be careful not to eat moldy sandwiches. I learned that no matter how sick you feel, well, maybe not no matter how sick you feel, but for the most part, even if you don't feel good, you can still make a good wedding video. And I also learned the importance of, if you're going to drive out of town and you potentially might get yourself into a situation where you're sick or something like that is going on, make sure that there's somebody you can call or someone you have with you who can back you up. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Storytime. I hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to come back for the next episode where I'll tell you about the time when I... Air conditioner.
Oh,
Mister, I have headphones on.
darn it. It's a natural noise.
Fired.